I am curious in terms of if you see, so you don't make this as a moral claim. It's just kind of a fact of reality.
It's a descriptive claim.
So do you think men should do these things? Like
which things?
That they should use force as an authority against women.
Well, sometimes. In some cases, sure. Like if a woman's committing a crime, something like that, I think men are totally justified in using force. I think if a woman attacks a man, he's totally justified in using force. I'm
talking as like a societal.
Yeah, but these are societal prescriptions. If a woman attacks a man, yeah, it's perfectly acceptable for him to
sure.
Smack
but
her
there
up.
are instances where you say like if like would you condone wife beating?
Well, no, but I wouldn't condone husband beating. So
sure, but you're saying that men's authority is through force. This is how why we should have patriarchy.
No, enforcement. Mm-hmm. Not so. That's the requisite.
But enforcement is.
Yeah, it is force. Yes. Yeah, but that doesn't mean
authority is through.
Remember,
force.
My claim is that might makes, not that it makes right.
Okay.
But that it.
So it's
shapes.
not a moral ought.
No, it's not. It's just a descriptive truth.
So do you think that men should work to cooperate with women in society?
No, I think women should cooperate with men in society because they depend on.
What does co-mean?
Yeah, I'll explain. I think that women depend on men for the use of force doctrine for their own protection. So I think.
I think under patriarchy, sure.
No, I think under matriarchy they still depend on men for force.
Well, you said protection, right?
Yeah, force.
Yeah. What are you protecting them from?
Well, you could be protecting them from other men, generally.
Right. So, I think under patriarchy, male violence is pervasive.
Under matriarchy, male violence is still pervasive.
Why?
Why is having a female leader going to make male violence no longer pervasive? That's bizarre. There's a difference between saying I have a society that's just filled 100% with women. That would be a claim, but you're not saying that. You're talking about a matriarchy versus a patriarchy.
Right, but I think when it comes to patriarchy, obviously we're talking about male supremacy and domination.
Yeah.
And a form of domination is through violence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with all of that. So what?
So obviously if that's not a tenet of matriarchy, then I don't think male violence would be pervasive because it's not used as a form of authority.
Are there still going to be men there?
Yeah.
What's going to make them less violent?
Well, obviously because it's not used as a form of authority. But I just got to telling you that
tied to wherever men are and women are, women will depend on men for the use of force, period. That's my claim, regardless of where they are. So it doesn't matter if you have a queen, and it doesn't even matter if you put women as the CEOs of everything.
Are we assuming that just authority in general is force?
No. Authority in general is in force, but in order to have rights or laws or governance of any kind requires force.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, so that's going to require men. So women are dependent upon men for force, period. So I think that
under a system of law, sure.
Under any system of governance. There's no system of governance in which women are not dependent on men for force. None.
You don't think that can be replaced with technology?
Nope. How? Men can destroy the technology. That's what force doctrine is.
Men maybe in groups too, but couldn't I say that about women?
No, because you're still going to have to compete with a male group. So your only options here are either this. Let's even say you reduce the male population down to 5%. You're just like, yay, it's all women now, and it's 5% men or something like this. You still would have a hard time controlling them. We know this because there have been war-torn nations where 80% of the men have died, and they're still in charge because of that monopoly on force. It's not because women don't have access to guns. They have access to guns, but they're less good with them. Guns require physical strength. Technology requires physical strength. Like tanks, it requires physical strength to load one.
Okay. But when we're talking about cooperation, co means with. So what's the delineation between you saying women should cooperate with men rather than men should cooperate with women?
Because men have the option that women don't have of utilizing force to make you cooperate.
Then that's not cooperating.
Yeah. Well, it is. Hang on. But it is still cooperation. So the idea here is just this. Is it the case that men should cooperate with women? I guess if they choose to.
Well, that's what cooperation is.
I would just say if they choose to.
I
wouldn't say that they should. I mean, they're going to be the ones who make the rules because they have the force.
But that's not cooperation.
Well, it can be cooperation.
No, co means with.
Yeah,
so,
it is
so
with.
It's doing it together.
Are you saying that if somebody's in a position of authority, necessarily that's not a cooperation? Like, do you not cooperate with your children?
I mean, I do cooperate with my children.
Yeah, so then
but that's
aren't
not,
you an authority?
That's not authority.
You're not an authority?
An authority in what sense?
You're in charge.
In charge of certain things, sure.
You're in charge of everything.
What do you mean I'm in charge of everything? I don't tell him like what he needs to play.
Can little Johnny tell you he's not going to the doctor today, Mom? Can he tell you he's not going to school?
I mean, if he's sick, sure.
Can he tell you he's not going to school?
Again, if he's sick, that's a possibility.
Okay, but
or
you think
I don't want to go to school. I'm not feeling well.
You think he's lying? He's like, Mom, I'm sick. You think he's lying? Is Johnny going to school?
Most likely.
Yeah. So,
but that's not cooperative. That's me using my authority.
When he goes and gets in the car, and he's quiet. When you take him to school and you drop him off, that is cooperation.
I see what you mean in that sense. Maybe there's a better word that I'm trying to think of where it's more working together and negotiating, where there is no necessary authority, like a partnership.
Yeah, but why should men have a partnership when they have the monopoly on force? I don't see why they need to have a partnership with women.
Why would you want to subjugate women?
It's not subjugation any more than it is with your children. So I think it's a privileged position that they get because they have the use of force. If they can be drafted and women can't, they get extra rights. Women don't get.
Again, I don't think that like war and the draft can always be like a necessary condition of the human existence.
Okay, give me a single 100-year span in which there wasn't massive war. Anywhere
the
in the world.
Iroquois lived in peace for 600 years.
No, the Iroquois fought plenty. Especially within the Iroquois.
I mean, there is a period of time, but there was also a period of treaty and peace.
The Iroquois are you talking about the Iroquois Confederacy?
No, the indigenous tribe, the Iroquois.
Yeah, I know. They had a confederacy, though.
Okay.
Yeah, so the confederacy meaning like in the United States, but under like a loose doctrine of law. The Iroquois Confederacy. My understanding is that the Iroquois fought endlessly, along with most Native American tribes.
No, there was a period of, I would have to look up the source, a period of 600 years of peace. No, I don't think war is a continuous state of mankind. War is just fighting over resources.
Yeah, you sure?
Yeah.
And mankind's always fighting over resources.
Well, yeah, because of either scarcity or manufactured scarcity.
Well, I mean, scarcity can simply happen naturally, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Are we talking about like?
So
like
if you
famine?
so if you just have natural scarcity, which happens all the time, you're gonna have conflict, and the enforcers in that conflict are going to be men. Men are going to be the defenders of your country,
right?
Your
But when it
nation,
comes
your
to
household.
like natural scarcity, then obviously, if you're in like communal groups, then that scarcity can be overcome where there's abundance.
Not always. Depends on what it is. Like, how are you going to communally in a group do anything about a food shortage? There's no food.
Other communities.
Yeah, if you have access to them.
Right. And I would say, like, in today's society, we absolutely do.
Yeah, that's true. In today's society, we do have global trade, things like this. You can assist people with various things. War hasn't gone away at all. Not even a little bit.
Well,
in the 20th, 21st
right,
century,
because
there's
of
been more warfare
manufactured,
than ever.
Yeah, because of manufactured scarcity. I agree.
No, it's not always because of manufactured scarcity.
Yeah, it would be dependence theory.
Okay, so why did we go to war with Germany? That was over scarcity the second time?
World War II?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the rise of fascism.
So what was the scarcity?
Well, within that one, I would say obviously it was like authoritarian regimes trying to enact
scarcity
land.
Though? From who?
From Germany. Germany was trying to...
How did that affect us?
I mean, it didn't, but obviously we wanted to stop imperialism only.
So it didn't have anything to do with scarcity for us, did it? I mean,
it eventually down the line, it was America's concern that Germany or Russia would become a superpower and then start to come take our land. That's what...
Wait, what? So there was no scarcity for us, and we still got involved in the war. It's not always about scarcity of resources.
I mean, I do think it is somewhat of a basis. Because isn't that what regimes are about power or authority over your land and your people?
Yeah, your land and your people.
And acquiring resources.
Yeah, what does that have to do with us? We didn't have to get involved in that war.
I know, you're absolutely right. We didn't.
Yeah, so, but we didn't get involved
But I'm
in
saying
it.
that the
it wasn't even
basis-
packaged as like resource problems. Nothing. So what
I mean-
resources were we without?
I'm saying that's like the crux of war.
It wasn't the crux of that war.
I mean, we were intervening in order to stop the imperialism from Germany to,
Very
to other
strange.
countries.
How does that? Well, here's the thing. Even if we had let it go, wouldn't we have benefited from that?
I mean, it's hard to say.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, that had nothing to do with scarcity. I don't think that the propensity for human war and violence is always about scarcity and resource. I think that that's Marxist nonsense.
What would it be about?
Oh, it could be about all sorts of different things. It could be about an idea of conquest, right?
What do you mean by conquest?
Oh, I want to take over everything because I want to.
Well, isn't land a resource?
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that it's, what's the scarcity? You have plenty of land. You just want more anyway.
Yes.
But how does that come down to scarcity? Because you're saying the motivation
It's essentially,
is, I don't have enough of it.
It's essentially acquisition of resources. And if you have more resources, then you're less likely to have scarcity.
Okay, so you agree with me that kings are the ones who send their people to war.
Yeah.
Do kings have a lack of resources?
I mean, not within like their own personal experience, but within their kingdom. Yeah, isn't that what led to the fall of Rome? Was essentially too much global expansion, and then because they didn't have the resources in order to sustain their civilization.
No. Well, I mean, maybe there's a small part there, but it was Christianity basically is what destroyed Rome. So that's what basically took out Rome. You know, when it's all said and done, was Christianity. It was the idea of no more unification of religious paganism. But I guess that's neither here nor there. You could that's another thing you could be fighting over, just religion. What's the scarcity there?
Oh, sure.
I don't like, Christian says, I don't like Muslims. Muslims say, I don't like Christians.
Sure.
Where's the scarcity?
I mean, obviously, that's not a scarcity of resources. So, sure, I can concede that there could be other motivations.
Yeah. So, and any
I
of
would say that would be the main motivation, though.
Okay, and so then within any motivation, men are going to be the operators of force doctrine. They're going to be the ones
Okay.
fighting the war, right?
Okay, yeah.
So if that's the case, they're going to necessarily need authority to do that.